Have you ever walked away from a conversation and thought, wait, how did they just make me agree with that in such a smooth, almost invisible way that didn't feel forced, didn't feel manipulative, but somehow felt natural and effortless? Because here's the truth, most people never realize the loudest voice in the room is rarely the one in control. And more often than not, it's the calm, steady, grounded presence that quietly shapes the direction of everything that happens.
And today, I'm going to show you exactly how that calm control works. How some people can guide a conversation without raising their voice, without interrupting, without dominating the space, and still walk away having subtly influenced the outcome.
And once you see it clearly, once you recognize the patterns and the psychology behind it, you'll never be able to unsee it again, because you'll start noticing it everywhere you go. Think about the last time you met someone who felt magnetic in a way that wasn't teased, flashy, or exaggerated. Someone who didn't need to prove anything, yet somehow made you lean in when they spoke, listen longer than you planned to, and open up more than you expected. That wasn't an accident, and it wasn't luck. Because what you experienced in that moment was skill, practiced, and refined through awareness, patience, and an understanding of how people really work. Because conversation isn't about talking, it's about steering. It's about shaping the emotional and psychological direction of the exchange in a way that feels natural to everyone involved. Most people think control looks like confidence, volume, and fast answers. But real control looks like patience, timing, and the ability to be comfortable with silence. Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed how in movies the most powerful character is often the one who speaks the least? The one who makes the room go quiet. The moment they finally say something, the one everyone waits for before making their next move. That's not just drama, that's psychology, because control begins before you even say your first word. The first invisible move is something I call the frame, because every conversation has a frame, a context, a hidden question in the air about who you are and how people should respond to you. When you walk into a room, people are subconsciously asking, who is this person and how should I react to them, even if they don't realize they're asking it. If you rush to fill the silence, you're answering that question for them in the weakest way possible. But if you slow down, look around, and speak last, you're letting the room adjust to you instead of the other way around. Here's a simple experiment. Next time you join a group conversation, don't jump in right away. Listen, smile, let 2 or 3 people talk, and then when there's a small pause, add something short and thoughtful. Watch what happens. Because heads will turn, people will respond to you instead of talking over you, and suddenly the energy of the group shifts in a subtle but powerful way. That's frame control in action. And once you feel it working, you start to understand how much influence timing really has. Now, let's talk about the second move, the one that feels like kindness on the surface, but works like a lever underneath. Because it's rooted in how deeply humans crave familiarity and connection. It's called mirroring, and it's based on the simple idea that people trust what feels familiar. And they relax around people who sound like them, move like them, and think like them. So when someone speaks fast, you slightly speed up. When someone speaks slowly, you slow them. When someone uses simple words, you keep it simple. And when someone gets more detailed, you go deeper with them. They don't think, this person is copying me. They think, this person understands me. And that feeling of being understood opens the door for influence. But here's the twist most people miss. Once you've mirrored them long enough, you can gently change the pace. You can slow down, lower your voice, soften your tone, and without realizing it, they follow you. You didn't force control. You didn't push. You didn't dominate. You invited it. And that invitation feels good instead of threatening. Let me tell you a quick story. There was a guy I once met at a crowded event with loud music, People shouting over each other, and everyone trying to be interesting and impressive all at the same time. He didn't compete. He stood there calm, relaxed, almost bored, and when someone talked to him, he leaned in slightly and spoke quietly. And what happened next was something you could feel in the room. They leaned in too, and within minutes, a small circle formed around him. Not because he was louder, not because he was more entertaining, but because he was quieter and more grounded. That's the third move, volume control. Because when you speak softly, people have to work to hear you, and anything people work for, they value more. Now, let's get into one of the most underrated tools in conversation: questions, but not normal questions. Guiding questions that shape the direction of where the conversation goes next. Most people ask questions to get information, but you ask questions to guide direction, to gently move the other person's thinking in a certain way. For example, instead of saying, "I think this idea is better," you say, "What do you think would happen if we tried this instead?" And suddenly, it's not your idea anymore. It's their idea. And people will defend their own ideas harder than they'll ever defend yours, which means you've created alignment instead of resistance. That's subtle control at its finest. Here's another layer. When someone is talking, don't wait for your turn to speak. Wait for their emotion. Listen for excitement, frustration, pride, or doubt, and then reflect that emotion back to them. You say things like, "So it sounds like you were really proud of that moment," or "That part actually sounds pretty frustrating for you," and watch their face light up. Because you didn't just hear their words, you heard them. And when someone feels seen, they trust you, and when they trust you, they follow you. Now let's talk about silence, the most uncomfortable tool and the most powerful one at the same time. Because most people rush to fill silence since it feels awkward and heavy. But silence creates pressure, and pressure makes people reveal more than they planned. Ask a question, then stop. Don't nod, don't jump in, just wait. And 9 times out of 10, they'll keep talking, they'll go deeper, and they'll explain more than they expected to. You didn't push, you didn't pry, you just gave space. And space is where control lives. Let me show you how this plays out in real life. Imagine you're in a disagreement and the other person is emotional. They're talking fast, raising their voice, and pushing their point harder and harder. Your instinct is to match them, to push back with the same energy. But instead, you lower your voice, slow your words, and pause between sentences. What happens next feels almost magical, because they start to slow down too, like 2 pendulums syncing up in the same rhythm. That's emotional leadership, and it's far more powerful than emotional reaction. Now, here's a move that feels almost unfair once you learn it. And it's called the assumption close, because instead of asking for agreement, you speak as if agreement is already there, not in a pushy or aggressive way, but in a natural, forward-moving way that gently pulls the other person into the future with you. For example, instead of saying, "Do you want to try this?" you say, "When we try this, the interesting part will be," and notice how you skipped the yes or no and moved straight into what happens next. Most people go along for the ride because the brain likes consistency, and once it imagines something, it wants to see it through. Now, let's talk about something deeper, something most people don't like to admit, and that is the hidden currency of every conversation, which is Tata, who is teaching, who is learning, who is reacting, and who is leading. All of these roles are being silently negotiated in every exchange. You don't need to dominate to raise your status. You raise it by being the one who decides what matters. When someone complains, you don't agree or disagree. You reframe. You say, "That's one way to look at it. Another way is," and in that moment, you're not inside their frame anymore. You're building a new one. And the moment someone steps into your frame, you're leading. Here's a practical example. Someone says, "This project is impossible," and most people respond, "Yeah, it's really hard." Or no, it's not. But both reactions keep you trapped in their reality. If you say, "What part of it feels most impossible right now?" you've shifted the conversation, and now you're guiding it instead of reacting to it. Let's go even deeper. Have you ever noticed how the best storytellers don't just tell stories? They pause at the best parts. They lower their voice before the reveal, and they let you lean in emotionally. That's not just talent, that's timing. And when you control timing, you control attention. Try this. When you're about to say something important, slow down right before it, create a tiny moment of suspense, and watch what happens. People focus. Phones go down. Eyes come up, because you signaled that something valuable is coming. Now, let's talk about one of the most powerful psychological triggers in conversation, and that is validation. Not agreement, but validation. You don't have to say, "You're right." You say, "I can see why you'd feel that way." And that one sentence can melt resistance, because people don't fight to be right, they fight to be understood. And once they feel understood, they stop fighting. And when the fight stops, the door opens. Now here's the part most people miss. Control isn't about getting what you want in this conversation. It's about shaping how people feel after it's over. Do they feel heard? Do they feel respected? Do they feel energized? Because people don't remember words. They remember emotions. If every conversation with you leaves them feeling slightly better, slightly clearer, and slightly more confident, they'll seek you out without you ever having to chase them. And when people seek you out, you don't have to chase control, because it comes to you naturally. Let's talk about body language for a moment, because your body is talking even when your mouth isn't. And people are reading it, whether they realize it or not. If you lean back, you signal comfort. If you lean forward, you signal interest. And if you tilt your head, you signal curiosity. So use these signals intentionally. When someone is talking about something important to them, lean in. And when a conversation gets tense, lean back and relax, because your body sets the emotional temperature of the interaction. Now let me give you a simple structure you can use in almost any conversation. First, open with curiosity. Second, reflect emotion. Third, guide with a question. And fourth, pause. Curiosity pulls them in. Reflection builds trust. Questions steer direction. And pauses create depth. Put those four together, and you become the person people feel comfortable following without even realizing why. Let me show you how this looks in one smooth flow. You say, "So what got you into this in the first place?" Then you add, "That sounds like it was a big moment for you." And then you follow with, "Where do you think this leads next?" And finally, you stay silent. Notice how that sequence invites a story. And whoever guides the story guides the conversation. Now here's a mindset shift that changes everything. You're not trying to win, you're trying to understand. And ironically, the moment you genuinely focus on understanding, you become more persuasive. Because people lower their guard around those who truly listen. Think about the people you trust the most. They're not the ones who always have the best arguments. They're the ones who listen the best, because listening is power. Now, let's talk about endings, because the last moments of a conversation often matter more than the first. And psychology calls this the recency effect. People remember how something ends more than how it begins. So, don't let conversations fade out awkwardly. End them with intention. You say things like, "It was really good talking about this with you," or "I'm glad you shared that with me," or "Let's pick this up again soon." And those small lines leave a big impression. And over time, you become the person associated with good conversations, with clarity, with calm, and with confidence. Now, here's the real secret, the one nobody tells you. The more you try to control people, the less control you actually have. But the more you focus on creating a space where people feel safe, heard, and understood, the more they naturally move in your direction. That's not manipulation, that's leadership. So the next time you walk into a conversation, don't ask yourself, how do I impress? Ask yourself, how do I make this person feel? Because feelings drive decisions. Decisions drive actions. And actions shape outcomes. And if you master that chain, you don't just control conversations, you shape connections, you build influence, and you become unforgettable. So, here's your challenge. In your next 3 conversations, try just one of these tools. Speak last. Mirror subtly. Use a guiding question or embrace silence. Watch what changes. Because once you see how invisible control really works, you'll realize something powerful. You've had this ability all along. You just needed to learn how to use it. And if this opened your eyes even a little, stay curious. Because the deeper you go into understanding people, the more the world starts to move differently around you.